толпе. Страшная, безжалостная, жестокая толпа мужчин и женщин окружала человека. Человек шел среди ней, высокий, спокойный. Он казался таким же безжалостным, как и сама толпа. Он был один из тех, которые воюют за правительство против народа.
Hello, and welcome to a little talk about some 19th century Russian literature written by Leo Tolstoy. First off, Count Leo Tolstoy, the renowned Russian writer, was born on September 9th, 1828 in Yasnaya Polyana, which translates directly as Bright Glade, and is currently a museum in tribute to Tolstoy, with the director as of 2010 being his great-great-grandson Vladimir Tolstoy. The Bolkonsky Bald Hills estate in War and Peace was envisioned around the Yasnaya Polyana estate. Yasnaya Polyana was located in Krepyensky Uyezd, Tula Governorate in the former Russian Empire. Tolstoy is regarded as one of the greatest novelists of all time, known for his works such as War and Peace, Anna Karenina, and The Death of Ivan Ilyich. In today's discussion, we will explore Tolstoy's Sevastopol sketches and its connection to War and Peace. The sketches were first published in Russian in 1855, with the first English-language edition coming in 1887. The Sevastopol Sketches is a collection of 3 short stories that Tolstoy wrote about the Crimean War. The Crimean War took place between October 16, 1853 and March 30, 1856. It was a war between the Russian Empire versus the Ottoman Empire, France, the United Kingdom, and Sardinia. The stories were inspired by Tolstoy's own experiences as a second lieutenant in an artillery regiment during the war, and more specifically during the 1854 to 1855 11-month siege of Sevastopol. The first sketch revolves around patriotic fervor, the second, snobbery and vanity as the flip side of calamity, and the third, the human sentiment in the shape of brotherly love and camaraderie. Sevastopol Sketches is often considered a precursor to War and Peace, as it deals with many of the same themes and ideas. Both works explore the effects of war on soldiers and civilians and the meaning of patriotism and heroism. As mentioned previously, Tolstoy's experiences in the Crimean War informed his writing of both Sevastopol Sketches and War and Peace. Tolstoy's Sevastopol Sketches can also be seen as a critique of war itself. The stories are not about the politics or strategies of the war, but rather the human cost of conflict. Tolstoy questions the morality of war and suggests that it is ultimately futile and destructive. Tolstoy's writing style in Sevastopol Sketches is notable for its realism and attention to detail. He depicts the war and its effects on society with a vividness and immediacy that makes it feel like you are there. This style is carried over into War and Peace, which is similarly detailed and realistic. The Sevastopol Sketches provides a window into Tolstoy's earlier writing, while War and Peace is a more significant and complex work that explores the human condition. There are many points of inspiration gleaned from the Sevastopol Sketches found within War and Peace, not just overarching details, but smaller scenes, such as when Rostov gambled away more money than he had and needed to ask for money from his father. Where in the Sevastopol Sketches, the younger Kozutsov gambled money he did not have and had to ask the elder Kozutsov for the money to repay his debts. The first story in the Sevastopol Sketches is Sevastopol in December and is written in the you, or second-person perspective, which acts as placing the reader directly into the story in an almost tour guide type of flow. This perspective is rightfully called the dramatic present. It is essentially a grim tour of Sevastopol, and it has actually been speculated Tolstoy may have experienced a very similar tour when he first arrived in Sevastopol. And in this story, instead of going from the arrival at the docks right to the action of the fourth bastion, Tolstoy takes the reader to the hospital where patients are having their bodies forever altered with 19th century technology, rudimentary amputations. This serves to showcase the dismal reality and horrors of combat. Yet the first story is riddled with jingoistic patriotism and sacrifice for the fatherland, which is why it was so well received by Tsar Alexander II, who also ironically had it translated into French. The following is an excerpt from Sevastopol in December to provide you with a bit of insight into the flow of the early war journalist approach of this first story. You begin to understand the defenders of Sevastopol. For some reason, you feel ashamed of yourself in the presence of this man. You would like to say a very great deal to him in order to express to him your sympathy and admiration, but you find no words. Or you are dissatisfied with those which come into your head, and you do reverence and silence before this taciturn, unconscious grandeur and firmness of soul, this modesty in the face of his own merits. "Well, God grant you a speedy recovery," you say to him, and you halt before another invalid who is lying on the floor and appears to be awaiting death in intolerable agony. Thus, you have seen the defenders of Sevastopol on the very scene of the defense, and you go back paying no attention, for some reason or other, to the cannonballs and bullets, which continue to shriek the whole way until you reach the ruined theater. You proceed with composure and with your soul in a state of exaltation. The first Sevastopol sketch is much shorter than the other two, and the only one written in a second-person perspective, and also the only that has no named characters. The second story is called Sevastopol in May, and this is where Tolstoy shifts from war journalist to storyteller and encapsulates an amazing story within these last two Sevastopol sketches. Sevastopol in May is an analysis of war, and the themes that are present in this short story have been credited as the basis of Tolstoy's sentiments towards the futility and vanity of war that is espoused within War and Peace. The ludicrous nature of how truces are just a precursor for more war, how war is an end of innocence, and how a baptism in blood slowly erodes away the soul of a nation. The following excerpt sums up the feeling Tolstoy conveyed eloquently, especially the final line on the true hero of his story. On his way home with a large bouquet, he held his nose because of the odor which the wind wafted to him, and paused beside a pile of corpses which had been carried off the field, and stared long at one terrible headless body which chanced to be the nearest to him. After standing there for a long while, he stepped up closer and touched with his foot the stiffened arm of the corpse which protruded. The arm swayed a little. He touched it again, and with more vigor. The arm swung back and then fell into place again. At once the boy uttered a shriek, hid his face in the flowers, and ran off to the fortifications as fast as he could go. Yes, white flags are hung out from the bastion and the trenches. The flowery vale is filled with dead bodies. The splendid sun sinks into the blue sea, and the blue sea undulates and glitters in the golden rays of the sun. Thousands of people congregate, gaze, talk, and smile at each other. And why do not Christian people who profess the one great law of love and self-sacrifice, when they behold what they have wrought, fall in repentance upon their knees before Him, who, when He gave them life, implanted in the soul of each of them, together with the fear of death, a love of the good and the beautiful, and with tears of joy and happiness embrace each other like brothers? No! But it is a comfort to think that it was not we who began this war, that we are only defending our own country, our fatherland. The white flags have been hauled in, and again the weapons of death and suffering are shrieking. Again, innocent blood is shed, and groans and curses are audible. I have now said all that I wished to say at this time, but a heavy thought overmasters me. Perhaps it should not have been said. Perhaps what I have said belongs to one of those evil truths which, unconsciously concealed in the soul of each man, should not be uttered, lest they become pernicious, as a cask of wine should not be shaken, lest it be thereby spoiled. Where is the expression of evil which should be avoided? Where is the expression of good which should be imitated in this sketch? Who is the villain? Who the hero? All are good and all are evil. Neither Kalugin, with his brilliant bravery, bravoure the gentilhomme, and his vanity, the instigator of all his deeds, nor Prashkuskin, the empty-headed, harmless man, though he fell in battle for the faith, the throne, and his native land, nor Mikhailov, with his shyness, nor Pest, a child with no firm convictions or principles, can be either the heroes or the villains of the tale. The hero of my tale, whom I love with all the strength of my soul, whom I have tried to set forth in all his beauty, and who has always been, is, and always will be most beautiful, is the truth. The final story is called Sevastopol in August and follows two brothers, Mikhail the elder and Vladimir the younger of the two Kozlovs. This can be summed up as essentially playing forth the end of innocence and how futile it is for one to fight, as in the end they both suffer the same fate. From Ralph Schussler's perspective, in contrasting the first two Sevastopol sketches, Wilson notes that the patriotism of the first sketch is tempered in the second by a strongly satirical sense of how absurd army life and military vanity can be, also by scenes in which the sufferings of wounded men are observed with intolerable vividness. The latter sketch's juxtaposition of bastion gore and boulevard preening makes the reader feel doubly imperiled. On the one hand, by finality, on the other, by banality. Sevastopol in August takes a different tack on the cost of war, showing how it tears out the heart of anyone, including the readers who feel affection for the fallen. A theme that is explored in both Sevastopol sketches and War and Peace is the impact of war on the human experience. Both works depict the horrors and tragedies of war and explore the psychological and emotional toll that it takes on those who are caught up in it. In Sevastopol sketches, this theme is explored through the experiences of soldiers who are forced to confront the brutal realities of war. Tolstoy portrays the soldiers as ordinary men who are caught up in a larger conflict that they do not fully understand. Through their experiences, he explores the psychological and emotional toll that war takes on the human psyche. In War and Peace, this theme is explored through the experiences of a wide range of characters, both on and off the battlefield. Tolstoy portrays war as a senseless and destructive force that brings out the worst in human nature. He explores the psychological and emotional toll that war takes on individuals, families, and society as a whole. However, despite Tolstoy's feelings towards war, the fact of the matter remains that without Tolstoy's experiences in Crimea, we would not have had these three stories. And while we may have had War and Peace, it would look significantly different without these core experiences that shaped Tolstoy and his writing. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of 19th century Russian literature. Have a beautiful, blessed, and fantastic day or evening. Bye for now.